Hello and welcome to the fourth Tea Talk with Rance at the Storytelling Advantage community on the Learn Ops community site. My name is Rance Green. I published this book in 2020 with ATD Press, Instructional Story Design. A lot of you have already read it. And the School of Story Design is the school that I own where we teach L&D professionals how to practice instructional story design. I started the Tea Talks with Rance not long ago because I wanted to reach out to L&D leaders about humanizing not just the product, not just the training that we produce, but also the entire process of learning and development. So if you are committed to becoming a great business partner with the organization, then you're in the right place. If you're interested in humanizing learning and development holistically, then you're in the right place. I'm going to share a brief video for our main sponsor, which is Cognota. We're very grateful that they have given us this platform that we can have this community.
This session is sponsored by Cognota. Still struggling with fragmented L&D tools? Transform learning operations into business impact. Cognota streamlines learning operations within one platform. For more information, a link is provided in the chat.
Well, I have tried out the tool. It is pretty cool. And some of you probably actually used that tool yourself. Thank you, John, for putting that link into the chat. I'd like to thank John. John is helping me today as the technology wrangler. He is an instructional designer, instructional design external consultant with a focus on articulate storyline. John hosts his own online workshop called Get Good. Get Good with Articulate Storyline. Would you like to say hi, John?
Sure. Thank you, Rance. I appreciate being here. Happy to help you. And if anyone out there is interested in, I heard Articulate Storyline mentioned earlier. Get Good with Storyline is coming on in August 15th, 6 o'clock Storyline. Josh Cavalier will be our guest speaker. If you're familiar with Josh, you'll know he is a very well-respected artificial intelligence guy. I am putting into the chat window right now my contact information as well as a link to the workshop. So August 15th, Articulate Storyline plus the big buzz around the world, artificial intelligence. Back to you, Rance.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I just had lunch with Josh Cavalier the other day. He lives in the Charlotte area, and I just moved to North Carolina, so we got to get together for lunch. Hello, Veronica. It's great to see you. Hello, Alumide. I'm so glad you came again. It's great to see you. For those of you who are maybe a first time joining the Tea Talks, I'd like to give you a little bit of context. So John is going to put a link in the chat to the poll for today. And it's not a true poll. It's more of a, I want you to be able to access this in the breakout groups type of thing. So as he puts that in there, go ahead and click that link, bring it up. I'm also going to share it on my screen, but I want you to have it on your screen as well, because you'll need it when we go to the breakout groups. And you will see the first thing that you will see is this thing called the Humanizing the L&D Process map. This map is the journey that we are taking as a group. And along the way are these connection points that we have external of L&D and internally as L&D. And as part of the business, we are interested in humanizing each one of these stops along the journey, starting with sharing the L&D story, which was a big topic in our last session. We're going to review that today, all the way through intake, which is going to be our main focus today. And we're going to take our time and we're going to get to the end. And every other Thursday we meet. And we're going to make it all the way through to sharing data. So Let's begin with a little bit of a recap of what we mean by sharing the L&D story. You may have seen something like this. It may be on your own intranet site. Just take a moment to read this. Okay, and you can advance the slide on your own screen, so I'm not going to continue to share this. If you don't have the poll up on your screen, you can screenshot this, but I'd like to talk about it. What are your observations about this L&D mission statement, this message that you are communicating, that this particular L&D department is communicating to all non-L&D business partners? And you can, just talk, or you can put your answers in the chat. What are your observations about that statement?
I can jump in. This is my first time here. I'm hoping I can get the recordings. I didn't even know about this. I'm so excited. But I think what stands out to me is they're really letting the business know that these training sessions are results driven and they enhance business performance. I cannot tell you how many, and probably you all get this too. Hey, we need you to come to our, our offsite and, do some team building. And it's like, okay, well, what is the business problem you're trying to solve? Oh, we don't have any problems. We just need a fun activity. And then I have to explain to them that my name is not Julie McCoy and I am not the cruise director. We are here to actually solve a business problem with our projects. I see some of you are love boat fans. So, but yeah, we really do have to communicate to the business that, we're fun. Our training is fun, but it has to make a difference in the business. Otherwise, you don't need us. You could hire, someone to come in and entertain you.
Thank you, Deborah, and
Sorry for my
welcome.
soapbox.
Thank you so much for joining. You're in the right place. The L in L&D stands for love, right? So we're glad that you're here. And yes, there is a place to watch all the recordings. So if you're not a member of the Storytelling Advantage sub-community within LearnOps community, you can request to become part of that community. And there's a little tab there called recordings. And that's where you can watch all of the ones that have come before this. So you are correct. It does talk about business results, business driven. That's not a bad thing. That's good. Anybody else? And we're coming at this as from a humanizing standpoint.
To me, it's not particularly memorable. It's not particularly easy to read. It's corporate speak. It's the right kind of corporate speak. Big progress from what you generally see.
Yes.
But it's not terribly compelling to me.
Yes. So I would agree. So even though it has the right components in there, it seems to be pretty sterile. Very, I think corporate speak is a nice way to put it. It is really difficult to slodge through, and by the second line, we kind of check out, right? I mean, it's like, oh yeah, this is what HR says all the time.
Also, it begins with the word we. We're talking about ourselves rather than beginning with the word you, your source for the things that you need, your source for value and help.
Yeah, it's very self-focused. So for those of you who are still looking at the poll, you should be able to advance it on your own to the next slide. Are you guys able to do that so that you can see the statement? You can? Okay, good.
I just figured
Yeah.
out, Rance, that it doesn't show unless you're full screen. I was half screen because I'm on one computer today.
Oh,
And so I
wow.
couldn't see the advance. but I got it now. Sorry.
That's a little quirky thing, isn't it? I'm so sorry. Okay, we'll have to tell Minty to change that about themselves. Okay, good. So in our last session, we talked about this and we talked about, okay, how can we humanize our story? Because what people's first impression of L&D may be what they see on that intranet site, or it may be, what we are saying to them about who we are. And we had this opportunity to actively tell who we are. So let's look at the questions that we answered last time. And if you would like to advance on your own, these are the questions we answered in our last session. How do we want our business partners to feel when they interact with us? What do we want them to say after they've interacted with us? What challenges are they struggling with? You'll notice that these first three questions have nothing to do with L&D. They're about them, the people we are serving, we are partnering with. The last question, how does L&D relieve their pain? So it's still about them. So the bottom line is, our L&D story does not begin and end with us. It begins with them. And so as I asked you to hash through these questions, answer them in the breakout group, we came back, we talked about your answers. You had some awesome, awesome answers to that. Went back to our breakout groups and we crafted stories for L&D. And I'd like to share one of those stories with you. Okay, so we remember, I'm just going to bring this one back up. This is the old one. We asked ourselves some questions, and this is the new version. All right, Terry, what's your response to that one? Was it compelling? Oh, I think
Yeah,
we've
and
got,
like what John said, it's focused on you because nobody wants to go hire, nobody really wants L&D. They want their pain relieved. They don't really care about the rest of the stuff. Can you fix my problem?
yes. Yes, that's right. And so I think that this message, I didn't change anything about this message. This is exactly how the group worded it. And so, yeah, there might be some opportunities here to tweak or whatever, but I think that they've done a good job, even though it's starting to talk about we at the beginning, it automatically shifts then. You have competing priorities. You have constant changes going on. So, but we have some tools that will honor your knowledge and honor the knowledge of your people, meet their specific needs. And so I like how they're gently pushing toward problem solving here rather than just automatically going into we develop training for you. But then it says we're aiming for solutions that leave your team saying, and this is my favorite part of the whole thing, wow, this helps me better do my work. Because isn't that what stakeholders want? They want their people to do their work better. So a very well-crafted story that I would say this is a much better elevator pitch than the other one. Any other comments about this version of the L&D story? What's your response to that message? Does it give you kind of some teeth about how you might craft your own L&D story? Anybody?
I quite like the concluding statement. This is what you get when you work with us. Wow.
Yeah, I like that too. And really, it comes from answering those questions here, how do we want them to feel? What do we want them to say after they've interacted with it? So they actually included a quote of what their people might say after they've interacted with us. So I love that. This is a much more compelling type of story to communicate to stakeholders. And so if we are communicating that message to our stakeholders, then when they come to us, they're coming to us knowing, okay, my people are going to say, wow, I can do my job better. I need to partner with these people. Let's go into the intake process. All right, how do I get going with these people? What do I do? How do I request them to help me solve this problem? So I took a poll, and a lot of you answered this poll already. And I just asked you, what does your intake process look like? And you said, let's see. So it's split that there's an online training request that stakeholders complete. Okay, so that's um, maybe the first time that people are interacting with you is actually completing that intake process. Okay, so they're doing that online. The second up is stakeholders call L&D to request training. Okay, that's cool. Now you have this little more personal, contact with the business partner. Third up is learning or HR partners consult with stakeholders and funnel training requests to L&D. So you might have kind of like L&D is below or being funneled into by folks who are kind of embedded in the business and advising the business. And when learning needs arise, they funnel things down to L&D. So that means you're going to have really strong relationships with those HR or learning partners, so that they are communicating your message for you to the business, and they are bringing to you real problems. And then lastly, one lone person is being invited to strategy meetings to discern if there are training needs. So let's up that one, okay? So let's boost that one up over the next remaining 6 months, okay, that we have together um, in this community. I asked you to comment to let you know how you think intake can set up L&D for partnership rather than order taker status. And Robin DeFelice, who is on the call. Hello, Robin. I'm glad she's here. She
Hi.
said, hey, thank you for sharing this. I love it, love it, love it. You guys just take a read. Well, I'll read it out loud. Start without intention or promise. Start by sharing your stories. Share the L&D story as it relates to organizational strategy. Okay, one of those stories could be what we just saw, the example that was created for us last session. And more directly with collaborators. Let the collaborators share their story of their perspective of their department. So invite conversation. And I say this all the time, like one of the reason that we tell stories at work is so that other people will tell theirs. And that is very true of L&D. We want to share our story so that the business will speak up and share theirs with us. What's going on? Who are the characters? What's the conflict? What do you wish would be the resolution? She goes on and she says, start by sharing individual stories of why you love working there or why you are excited to work there. Robin, that is so cool, and I've never heard anybody else say that. Once those personal stories and org stories are woven, then speak to the need. That is the third story. And that one is just a story started, not ended, And the writing of it shouldn't be completed during that conversation, but the next chapter outlined. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. So 3 stories here, personal stories, organizational stories, and then problem stories. What's the problem? What's the need here? A very concise and nice framework to go into those conversations with. Cool. I'll stop here. You guys want to talk about what Robin has said? Robin, do you have anything further to say about this?
No, not really. It's just, there's so many expectations when you walk into the room. And so you kind of pull people out of that mission driven expectation of just telling you what they want. And it allows the whole experience to be a little more humanized, in my opinion. And it
Yes.
starts to help them understand that you're part of the organization too. And you have equal stories to share that both allow you. So sometimes you walk into a room and it's all about them and what they do to make the organization, function successfully. And this way, you both get to talk about how you can do things together. And you might start to, it also gives you a little bit of an understanding of the person. So
Yeah.
you'll see if they talk more about themselves, or you'll see if they start talking more about the company and the work they do. It's quite interesting what you can learn by a little bit of story sharing back and forth.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. To be a good listener, you really have to be good at getting them talking. And one of those ways is through story sharing. I love that. And also, you bring up a good point, Robin, in that we also often think of ourselves as partners to the business instead of we are part of the business. We're in it. So we are partners inside the business. We are co-collaborators, whatever you want to call it.
To
So
build on that, would it help by beginning the conversation by stating the organization's mission statement or a KPI, or somehow going very high level and say the entire organization is focused on this and here is how we support that?
yeah, I think that would come in part 3 of that conversation where you're starting to talk about needs. Um, get Still stick with the personal and the organizational stories first. That's my intuition. And then when you get to the needs part, okay, let's tie this to those organizational goals. Um, okay, yeah. So Robin agrees with that. The third story, it weaves it all together. Yeah, it's that personal connection first. Then, yes, I think you're right, John. Let's tie in those organizational goals with the needs that we're going for here.
In my the way that I have intake, so I'm the owner of my company, and I have corporate stakeholders speaking on behalf of the learner, right? So whoever that group is, and a lot of times during intake, they're just clueless. They have
Yeah,
no, they can't tell a story about the learner. They can't even answer basic questions like what's their average education level? What does their role entail? Like, what does a typical day look like for them? Like, they can't. And so it makes the intake process very difficult.
yeah, yeah. So have you found any ways to um, overcome that? If going into it, it's so opaque and you
Yeah.
don't have that much of an inside view, what do you do? How do you get through that?
If I can't, if they can't allow me to at least send out a questionnaire, or if we can't bring in at least the department head to the analysis meetings,
Yeah.
I end up making the training very broad. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm hitting the mark, on engagement because I didn't have a lot of details. Like they might give me an age range of 20 to 60.
Mm-hmm.
You know, stuff that's just not helpful, right? So I kind of try to focus just on the industry
Mm-hmm.
and the environment. So if they're in the manufacturing plant or if they're in an office environment, you know, so I'll do a lot of that. I'm still high level interactivity, but I just feel like, you know, they're losing out on learner impact
Yeah.
as far as measurable results.
Yeah. So there's a lot to talk about there. But I don't want to neglect to give you guys some time in the breakouts and maybe actually address some of these things that you're talking about, Cheryl. So in the poll, there's some instructions here. So go ahead and advance to this slide of the poll. In the breakout room, I'd like you to describe your current intake process and describe how you feel about that current process. And then discuss as a group how you might change the intake process and why. With the goal, we're all here with the goal of partnership and humanization. Humanizing the intake process and using that intake process to build partnership. Good? Do you have any questions about what we're going to be talking about in the breakouts? Okay. Let's take about 15 minutes in the breakouts. I'll be jumping around to the different breakouts myself, and I'll put you into, since there are 15 of you, how about 4 groups? And so there we go. There are, yeah, 4 different rooms, and I'll keep a lookout if, you know, one of you ends up as a stray without anybody in your room. I'll make sure you get moved over. Okay, I will see you in 15 minutes. Hello and welcome back, everybody. I didn't get to every breakout room, I'm sorry, but boy, did we have some nice conversations in the ones that I did go to. Let's talk a little bit. We have, what, 9 minutes left. And in one of the rooms that I went to, there were a number of ways that stakeholders contacted L&D for that intake process to begin. One was through an online form, followed by then an in-person or online like a conversation with a questionnaire. That was Deborah's. And then Michael and Veronica and DL, I believe. Michael, tell us a little bit about the stop by thing. Describe that for us.
Yeah, so we're just kind of an open door kind of process. So basically, either email, Teams, phone call, or just come by come across the hallway and say, hey, I'm thinking about some training, or I need some training, or a client needs something.
Yeah.
And so I jot it down, and then we schedule, and then we end up with a more in-depth conversation. But yeah, our intake, our initiation is just very if you need me, I'm here kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been thinking about some training. Yeah, you go, man. You keep thinking about that training. So yeah, thank you guys for sharing all that. And one of the things that came up during that discussion was like, I really want to be able to humanize those conversations, make them more I think Michael, you said like not so stale and formal, but something a little more humanized so that can really get to the the problem. And I like Rebecca, what not Rebecca, Deborah, I'm sorry. Well, I like what Deborah described in one of her methods is like keep following the rabbit holes. Like just let the conversation happen. Encourage them to share their stories with you because sometimes it's in those rabbit holes where you find the answer. And you gave a great example of that, Deborah, about like communications. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, I was just sharing that, sometimes what people think their team needs isn't necessarily what their team needs. They might, a leader might come to us and say, hey, my team really needs training on communication. They don't communicate very well. And then you start digging into, okay, well, tell me about the communication, give me some examples. And you find out that on their team of 5 or 6 people, 2 team members don't get along, and the manager hasn't done a very good job of managing that relationship. And it's really all about training that manager to have those difficult conversations, not about training the team on how to communicate with each other. So those
Yes.
are hard conversations sometimes to have with the manager and say, you know what, this is really on you. But yeah, it's that, tell me the whole story, tell me the whole picture, not just what you think you need or what you think is gonna solve the problem.
Yes, that's a wonderful example of opening up for conversation and really finding the answer during that story sharing with one another. Um, and figuring out that, oh, you just saved your team a whole bunch of time creating some communications training when it was just an interpersonal thing that the manager needed to deal with. So it's a beautiful example. I'd like to open it up to any of the other groups. Did you discover something in those groups, in those conversations where you're like, ooh, I really want uh, to try something new with this? Anybody?
Well, I did. My
Yay!
group my group helped me with some ideas for getting more from the stakeholders. So if I do a set of questions for an intake form, that I have them complete first, and then say, we can't schedule your first analysis, because I usually do a series of 3 analysis sessions. Um, so we can't even schedule it until you complete the form. So I thought that was a really good idea to maybe encourage them to think a little more, maybe even go and ask some of the people who lead the group of learners, just to get some questions answered, that would give me a little more insight. So,
Good. Good. So awesome. Well, I'm glad that you came in with a a roadblock and you're leaving with a little bit of a barrier breaker. That's nice.
Well, I think,
Anybody
and
else?
building off of Cheryl in our group, one of the things that I don't do is take that space time to learn about things in pieces. So going back to Robin's statement earlier of coming at it, 3 different stories, Cheryl kind of breaks those 3 different stories up into 3 different meetings. And
Mm,
I like a combination of those 2 things, trying to do it a little bit more spaced to help me to ensure I have everything I need to be successful.
nice. Nice. Um, Thank you, Alana. That's awesome. Yeah, coming in prepared. That's really good. And then Robin, you said that Sarah had a compelling story. Sarah, would you mind sharing that story with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we start supporting different business areas in the company, we set up a quarterly business review with them. And we were talking, DL was talking about some of the challenges he has is getting the resources that he needs in order to really deliver the types of outcomes that he wants. And I explained that in this quarterly business review process, we've been doing it evolving it for about 10 years. And I would say we're in a good place now, but it wasn't good when we started. And
Mm,
the purpose of that quarterly business review is to figure out what they want to accomplish this quarter, talk about what we did last quarter, and then have them commit to resources. And then we'll report back on using status updates on what's not happening. So why, what we can deliver and what we can't deliver based on their availability, because we're very dependent upon this me availability. And now that we've been in this for about 10 years, we're, really clicking along and have the right relationships built, that it didn't happen overnight for sure.
nice. Thank you so much, Sarah. That's awesome. Quarterly reviews.
Yeah.
That's cool. A lot, I'm seeing also in the chat over here that Alana's team discussed forms a lot, the possibility of using them as pre-intake to ensure they have gathered the information you need and to not come unprepared. We're going to spend our next session, because when it comes down to it, it's about questions. Whether it's an online form or you're meeting with somebody, at some point you're going to be asking a question, probably many questions. And so we are going to spend our next session crafting a questionnaire. And it's going to be humanized. It's going to draw out the story. And you're going to make it with some guidance. And I'm excited to bring that intake process to life with one another. So if you would like to join, if you haven't joined already, the Storytelling Advantage community, that's where you can see the recordings. John is going to put a link to the Storytelling Advantage community in the chat. And once you're in that, these events will happen in the general tab under events, but the recordings will remain in our community, our private community. I also want to thank the School of Story Design, and John has put a link to that in the chat as well. And so that is where you can get training on humanizing the learning product, mainly through instructional story design, beyond story production, humanized virtual training for facilitators, and other workshops. Thank you guys so much for spending this hour with me. It's been great. I hope you've enjoyed your tea and your talk. I am looking forward to seeing you guys in 2 weeks, and I'll let you know when the recording is available. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Rance.
It was a fast hour, wasn't it, Rosie? Bye, guys.